We would do classes with, we'd have French Self out there, we'd have OGA, we'd have contractors, we'd have JTAX, we'd have, you name it, we had these amazing, amazing dudes that were just looking for a place to heal, just looking for a place to find a little bit of respite. Even if we were on the roof of our team house when it was loud as shit and you had helicopters flying over and generators buzzing and it was hot, and we're practicing on cardboard and shitty rubber mats and whatever we could find, it was still a place where people were healing in a combat zone. And there was something amazing about that, something really powerful about that. And that's really where I started teaching. And that's how I have come into myself as a teacher. And that's how American Yogi has developed, through having those experiences as well.
Hello and welcome to the Vinny Brusco Show podcast, episode number 439. I hope you've been enjoying the show. If you have been, do me a favor, subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you're getting it. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. Leave a little comment, click subscribe, leave a couple 5 stars, spread the word, tell a friend. Wherever you're getting the show, just show some love if you can, please, and thank you. This week's episode, I'm joined by Phil Sussman. Phil is a father, he's a husband, he's a veteran, and he's the co-founder of American Yogi, where he's bringing the world of yoga to help heal veterans and his community around him. Phil first got into yoga back overseas when he realized that he was horribly injured and had a broken vertebrae. And his wife, who is a big yogi, brought him into the world of yoga, and it slowly started to transition Phil and help heal his body along with his mind and his spirit. Phil and I got into a whole bunch of different topics, everything from mind, body, fluidity, to yoga as a practice, to sensory deprivation, of course, to being a veteran, surfing in Vietnam, and doing yoga in Afghanistan, and manifesting your Stoke. Unfortunately, half of this podcast was lost due to technological difficulties. Phil will be back on the podcast to further discuss what brought him into the Army, what made him sign up for service, and further discuss his experiences overseas as a photographer. So I hope you enjoy episode number 439 with Phil Sussman. Enjoy.
Hey, this is Phil Sussman from American Yogi, here to talk to Vinny on the Vinny Brusco Show.
And here we go.
First off, thank you so much for your service. Like, coming from a son of a veteran, I appreciate you serving, and congratulations on, I don't know, is that a congratulatory thing when someone finishes serving?
Yeah, dude, it's congratulatory. I mean, every time somebody gets out, everybody is, or most dudes are pretty jealous of those guys. To be one of those guys getting out, dude, it's amazing. It was like a monster feeling of relief when I got out. Went straight from the Soldier Support Center where I got my DD 214 to walking out to the truck. Dude, I bawled when I got to the truck, man. It was a hell of a release. So yeah, congratulations are definitely in order.
So congratulations then, and again, Thank you so much for everything that you've done for our country. And I appreciate you showing up in the world, because we need people like you in the world, and I think that mindset and that appreciation and respect, whatever your political affiliation is, has somewhat fallen by the wayside.
Yeah, I keep politics almost 100% out of everything we do, because it's not about politics. It's about us, about the healing.
What got you to sign up for the Army? Because I had Rabbi Mordecai Finley on a few weeks back, and he's a rabbi. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he is a veteran from the Marine Corps. And a big part of him signing up for the Marines was this kind of existential search for more. He was looking for something more out of life. Yeah. Was it something of that, or was it kind of just this feeling of duty and obligation? What had you sign up for the Army?
Yeah, it's a mix. I think most guys that you talk to that are in the military are going to tell you generally the same thing. Before I joined, I wanted to be part of something greater than myself. I guarantee 99.9% of soldiers you talk to are going to give you that answer. And then a lot of guys, the other part of it is, my family, I thought my father, my grandfather, my uncle, they were in the Army, the Navy, whatever it was. And then there's that just, I've always wanted to do it. And I kind of came from a place where Mostly it was something that I always wanted to do my whole life. I came, really close calls of joining, but it just didn't kind of pan out for a couple of years. And finally I said, screw this. I just need to do it. Something I want. It's something I wanted for a long time. 9/11 also played a monster hand in me joining. I started as a photojournalist, trying to do really what I ended up doing in the Army in the end, just with different means. But by the time I finished, I got to do exactly what I wanted to do, and I got to experience all the things I wanted to experience. That I wanted as a contractor for the Army, but I got as a soldier. And really, what it came down to. My final job before I joined the Army, I was a contractor up at Fort Lewis, Washington, for the public affairs office there. And I spent all my time out in the field with the boys, and I got invited on two pretty serious deployments. The boss that I had at the time decided that he would rather have me home covering, intramural basketball and award ceremonies, despite getting invites for deployments that I wanted to go on as a civilian. The strengths of what we're trying to do with American Yogi.
Yeah, so American Yogi kind of takes formation under the guides of all your past experiences and bringing them all to a head and bringing them to a tipping point. How much has yoga? I mean, obviously you mentioned the spiritual. Obviously, it helped you significantly in the physical aspect of things. How much of you was reluctant to leaning into the spiritual?
So the interesting part is that I actually began this whole journey of healing with the spiritual space. So I leaned hard into meditation groups. So I would find myself in meditation groups in mountains with, random old people who we would do silent meditation with for an hour at a time. We'd walk into this cabin, do our meditation, and leave without talking to each other at all. I'd go to college campuses and learn how to meditate with professors among college kids. I'd read every book I can get my hand on. So my practice actually started with meditation, because that actually allowed me to really start my healing and find calm and find presence. And then when I found yoga was amazing for me, because it was the physical expression of the mental work that I was doing. So it felt like, to me, I liked hot vinyasa classes, which are really heavy movement and a little bit more difficult on the body. And it felt to me, so I used to wrestle when I was in college, and I tried to walk on a little bit, I wrestled in high school. I tried to walk on in college. So I was very dedicated to the sport, and I was a wrestling coach as well. So I liked to teach my classes, and I liked to go to classes at the time that had that same feeling to it, where you're just gritting it out. You're sweating your ass off, you're moving, you're pushing your body. So at the same time where you're doing all those things, you're also focusing, even subconsciously, on what's happening in your head. And you're starting to process the things that you're going through in your daily life, and finally finding a place where you can deal with those. So it was the perfect combination for me between the mental aspect of yoga and the physical aspect of yoga, and both things that I needed heavily in my life at the time. And then I wanted to spread that to as many people as possible. And it started in the vet community, but now we want to touch everyone. Everyone that's in a place where they feel like they could use some healing from life. That's who we want to find American Yogi.
I mean, going back to your experiences, overseas, and being basically captive, and being, deaf, and being kind of lost, and then finding your way into this very Zen, calming space where you're dealing with that trauma, you're dealing with those experiences, but it's almost, harnessed, and it's almost being channeled in this way, and this new way to interface with it. What, if you don't mind sharing, what came up, and what was kind of that healing process like?
So are you referring to the healing process kind of at the beginning of the journey, or the healing process when I was overseas kind of practicing?
Well, I would say, going overseas and meditating and being in this same arena, but not having the yoga element of it, right? So that's one element of it, the spiritual healing. But then you have the physical aspect of it that you're kind of bringing together, right? Where yoga, like you said, it's this perfect combination of the two worlds. Healing overseas, did it heal all of, like, did you come here feel like, okay, I feel like that part of me's healed? Obviously, with all due respect, obviously not, if there was still this urge to heal further.
Yeah. So what I'll say to kind of caveat that is that I don't believe that my journey of healing will ever end. I think that I will most likely spend a lifetime continually trying to heal, even at small incremental ways of the things that I need to deal with. When I started the journey with meditation, it was tough because you're talking about, because I didn't, no one ever explained to me that meditation could be just about anything. I had no teachers. So I thought, all right, so all except for the teachers, I go to the meditation groups. And I thought to myself, all right, meditating is sitting quietly and silently for X amount of time. And it was good, but it was really, really hard for me. And when I found yoga, my meditation practice kind of merged with my yoga. And then I started to grow by leaps and bounds. Like I said, also talking to a counselor, multiple counselors that helped me a hell of a lot. By the time I got to my last deployment, so I was in Syria last year, I'd gotten my 200-hour certification to teach yoga. And when I got there, everybody, when they get to deployment, you have a weird mix of emotions among people that are there. You've got the guys that are super stoked on it and just happy to be overseas. You got the guys that are anxious to go out and shoot people in the face. You've got the guys that are new and trying to figure it out. I mean, you've got every type of person. And the cool thing about being overseas and applying the mindfulness and the yoga and the meditation is that you're able to connect a population of people, of really tough people in this world, in this military, that probably need it most. And no one had ever come to them from someone that looks like them, from a place that someone that speaks their language and that can give them an outlet that feels accessible to them. So we would do classes with, we'd have French Solf out there, we'd have OGA, we'd have contractors, we'd have JTACs, we'd have, you name it, we had these amazing, amazing dudes that were just looking for a place to heal, just looking for a place to find a little bit of respite. Even if we were on the roof of our team house when it was loud as shit and you had helicopters flying over and generators buzzing and it was hot and we're practicing on cardboard and shitty rubber mats and whatever we could find, it was still a place where people were healing in a combat zone. And there was something amazing about that, something really powerful about that. And that's really where I started teaching. And that's how I have come into myself as a teacher. And that's how American Yogi has developed, through having those experiences as well.
Yeah,
If
and
that makes sense.
yeah, and it's so important to provide people, especially men. I facilitate a men's group and here in Westchester, and I could tell you that it's so important to have that space where people feel seen for more than the mask or for the facade that they have to put on in the everyday life, and for them to show up authentically without having to, camouflage themselves. And I'm sure, especially in that type of atmosphere, right? The bravado is probably through the roof. There's a lot of just energetically, it's probably very tense. I've never been in that type of setting, but being around guys and and now amplify that and add guns and add explosions and the piss and vinegar of a young man and bring all that together without harnessing that energy. That is a lot of, I don't want to say toxic, but it's a lot of pent up, ready to explode energetic field. And by, offering this service of yoga and meditation, it kind of diffuses that a little bit.
I wouldn't even say kind of. I think it absolutely does diffuse
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
The wild thing, I remember telling somebody someday, I'd have a morning meeting. No. I'd have a morning mission where I'd be rolling out with government agencies and other kind of secret squirrels type agencies. And we'd have a really cool mission in a really shitty place with shitty people and an understanding of where I was, which was not a safe place. And as a ground force commander, I had a lot of responsibility on my plate where, the last thing I was thinking of was was mindfulness, for example. I tried to focus on my breathing. I tried to focus on staying calm, but for the most part, I was focused on keeping the guys that I was with alive. So I'd have a mission like that in the morning where I'm just keyed up for hours and hours and hours. I come back, I'll have some sort of intel briefing with some foreign military that was on a small fire base. Later on, I'd have, meetings with United States government agencies, and then that night I'd be on the rooftop doing yoga under the stars. And there was something about that was pretty amazing to me. And I don't know what it was, but by the time I was doing yoga and meditating at night, I was able to feel peace at night. And that was the first deployment I've ever had where I was able to achieve that. And there's a lot of guys that would come to me and say, dude, I am strong the hell out and I need something, but I know I can't meditate. I've never been able to sit for more than 5 minutes. And I said, all right, come up to the roof of the house. And I'd bring people through meditations for 90 minutes long. And they'd leave and they'd say, I'm just a different person. And to be able to provide that for people in a situation where they needed it most, I think it's indescribable.
Yeah. And how is it received by, higher ups and people in your immediate peer group?
I think, the higher ups didn't really give a shit. But the immediate peer group, the first time when I started doing yoga, we were in transit to our final destination, and we were living, it was kind of like when COVID was starting out, so things were a little weird. So we were in this little kind of transit camp. And I said, you know what? There's no gym. I got nothing to do. Let's do some yoga. So I found a cardboard box and I unraveled the box, put some heavy rocks on the four corners of it. I put a sandbag on it so I'd have kind of a block. And I just started doing yoga, and people would look at me and they kind of look at me sideways, and it was a little interesting. But I did my class, and then the next day, and I wanted to be visible. I wanted everyone there to see me. And I was with some pipe eaters, I was with some tough dudes. And as a civil affairs guy, we're not seen as tough guys. We're the hearts and minds guys. But after a day of doing it, I had another guy on the mat the second day. And then after that, I had 3 guys and I had 4 guys. Then in the deployment, I had 20-something guys that were doing yoga with me. And I think there's something amazing about it that shows you that, guys that are in that situation, they're more likely to seek out those treatments, where when you're talking stateside, a lot of guys will drown themselves, whether it's in booze or social media or video games or women or whatever it is. But when you're in a vacuum overseas, in my opinion, that's the best time to tap into those guys. That's the best time for me as well to really focus.
Well, they're seeing you as a leader in that, right? And they're seeing you, and like you said, you look like them, you speak their language, you're in the shit with them. And if it's okay for you to show up this way, and it's okay for you to step on a yoga mat and start doing, downward dog and warrior 1 and warrior 2, then it gives them permission to show up in that way as well. And like you said, initially, you even had that stereotypical, yoga is the housewife workout, but there is something about it. Yeah, there is something about it that you can do it anywhere. You don't need weights. You can just, to me, it's like it's running to an extent. I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's kind of that same idea where there's this endless fluidity to it that if you could tap into it for a hair of a second, everything around it that's led you to that second is well worth it. And that's the dragon that you chase afterwards, right? No different than the dragon you were chasing when you were, putting yourself in these dangerous situations, taking pictures and putting yourself in a very vulnerable position. But it became this dragon that you were like, oh man, that got me going. Where this is the yin and the yang to that energy, right? Now, this is the peacefulness to that same experience. And you could tap into the experience of the adrenaline rush and go, okay, this is the water to the fire.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when you look at it, when I started doing yoga over there, I had one dude that wrote up. I took a Write in the Rain notebook, so it's like a waterproof piece of paper, and I wrote on it, okay, come do yoga in my team house, and I put it on the bathrooms, which were just trailers on the fire base, and one of them was tagged up with, oh, this is gay, this is just slurs.
Sure.
And it pissed me off at first. And I thought about it and I said, you know what, this guy needs the most, so I'm not going to compromise who I am or hide who I am, because there's people out there that may think it's one way or the other. Because when it comes down to it, me as a leader, me as someone, I was one of the higher ranking guys on the fire base. And in my position, it just felt, and maybe it was because of the position that I was in, that guys felt more comfortable coming to someone, that wasn't some, PV2 fueler, for example.
It put you as the leader. Again, it put you as the leader. And you're going to have those people, and to have the wherewithal to say, all right, like, and again, yeah, you could go down the idea of, fuck this guy, he's a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. Or you could say, all right, and catch yourself in that moment, right? And say to yourself, that dude needs it more than anybody. Right? That guy needs it more than anybody here.
That was exactly my thought. Who knows? Maybe he did come to one of my classes.
Right. He was next in line.
Yeah.
How has being back and kind of ending your career, so to speak, in the Army and in service, how has that transition been for you? I know we spoke a little bit earlier about it being a congratulations and something that you're happy about. But how has that shifted with the identity? Because so much of your life has been in service in this way.
Yeah, dude, I'll be dead honest, man. And really, hopefully there's guys that are listening, they're in the same position. It's brutally hard. It's incredibly hard. Doesn't matter all the skills that I have, all the training I've been through, not military training, the spiritual training, the yoga training, the meditation training, all those things. It doesn't matter. Well, it matters, but despite it, I'm still struggling. It's hard. The way that I'm approaching this point in my life feels like a deployment. I'm arming myself. I'm putting steel-clad armor on myself to be able to get through this spot in my life, because I know that eventually I'll be in a spot where things are better. Yeah, it's tough. You're changing your entire, not changing, you're evolving your entire identity. It's something you've identified for over a decade, or for me, for over a decade, as who I am and what I do. All of a sudden I've got to find ownership of other things. American Yogi has been great. American Yogi gives me purpose. Getting messages every day from people telling me how much that I've changed their lives by the things that I've written or said, that makes it worth it. That keeps me going. But if I had found myself, and when I do find myself in places where I feel like, shit, what am I doing in my life? I sit down and I write, and it's just lists. It's lists of all the things that I want to do, all the things that I am doing, that I need to do, that are my future goals, what's important to me. And then I read those and I figure out my plan ahead. And since I've gotten out of the Army a month and change ago, I've never run out of things to keep me motivated. And for me, that's been the key, despite how absolutely goddamn hard it is.
Yeah, you spoke a little bit earlier about the people around you when you were deployed, and them saying that they can't meditate, or they can't sit still for 5 minutes. And I think it's that old quote, all men's problems stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room by himself. And and that, for me, I'm a big advocate of sensory deprivation. That's been a huge tool for me.
I'm all over it. I'm all over it. Yeah.
I love it. And for me, it was, I thought to myself, I had this thought of, I'm afraid of what I'm going to think. And in that moment, I was like, well, that's scarier than anything I'm actually going to think, because that means it's still happening in the back. I'm just afraid to interface with it. And in that moment,
it's a challenge.
Right. Exactly. And in that moment, I booked a float session, and I walked out there and I was a different person. And I've had some amazing experiences in the tank. And so many people do resort to that. Well, I can't meditate. It's this. And meditation doesn't have to be anything formally. It doesn't need to be this enlightening experience. It takes time to get into a space where you can kind of relax to some degree, and bringing that experience with you throughout your life, especially when you come across challenges, especially when you have identity issues, or especially when you feel like, what am I doing with your life? The most grounding thing you can do is get still.
Yeah, no, absolutely. To get still, and then to use that stillness. Getting the stillness is like kind of the key that opens the door. Once you're in that stillness, that's the time to do the work. That's the time to think, well, shit, where's my mind going? What are the things I'm really thinking about right now? What is it that I'm trying to avoid? Why am I spending 6 hours a day looking at social media blindlessly on my phone, or aimlessly on my phone, when really what I should be doing is trying to think about the thing that I'm trying to avoid? As painful as it is, as bad as it makes you feel, if you don't start analyzing those things, they just eat you alive. So the float is a vehicle. Yoga is a vehicle. Yoga's not the end all. Mountain climbing could be your vehicle. Riding your bike or running, finding that runner's high. washing the dishes, cleaning the floor, painting the house, all of those things are yoga. All of those things it's a limb of yoga, of meditation, of concentration. Taking care of your body in the morning. And that's what I tell people. You get up in the morning, you wash, you shower, you put your deodorant on, your cologne, you take care of your hair, you trim your beard if you have a beard, all these things that make you feel good. That's part of a limb of yoga, purity. It doesn't have to be getting on the mat in a physical practice that actually brings you to that place that you can find healing in. That's something a lot of us forget.
Yeah, it's a culmination of the physical and the spiritual coming together in a balance of presence and creating a harmonious experience. And you can have that washing the dishes, and you can have that mowing the lawn, and you can have that on a jiu-jitsu mat or on a yoga mat or anywhere, having a cup of coffee. And I know you're a father, and I know so many of my experiences as a father, something I lean into being a dad for sure. It's definitely one of those things that I identify so heavily in. And my children will rattle me into reality and ground me in a way that I don't think many things do, right? If I'm get ready in the morning, dad, and I will be at my wit's end. My wit's end. Like I have had it up to here, I am fucking done. And then my daughter will say, like, to my son on the ride the other day, she turned to him and goes, "Today at Religion, I'm going to pray for you." And I was just like, oh, I get it. Right. And we lean into all these, especially as dads or as moms, we lean into all these other big plans and big events and big moments, but it really is these small little micro moments that rattle our reality, that ground us into the space of, and really what it means. Right. And you could do that in your own experiences by being present when you're washing dishes or having a cup of coffee or in the shower. Right. It doesn't have to be these grand moments of enlightenment, and it often isn't.
No, I would say not even often. I would say the majority of the time it isn't. I had a very hard day today. Some things happened that really set me off, but at the end of the day, I said, you know what? And I try to stay away from TV with my kids. I've got a couple of 3-year-olds and an older one as well. And they wanted to watch a Halloween movie. I said, you know what? We did pumpkins today. Like let's watch a Halloween movie. I had one of my little girls laying on me, just totally like she was laying on her stomach on her bed, but it was on me. And the other one was snuggled into my arm. And in that moment, I felt at peace. I laid there with my eyes closed and I took some deep breaths, and that was meditation for me. That gave me a little slice of nirvana, and I felt a hell of a lot better. And I think there's a lot of guys out there that have families like that, or a girlfriend like that, or a wife like that. That's a way to tap in. That's a way to find your wellness. So I think we underestimate it by putting so much pressure on, what is enlightenment? What does it mean to be, an enlightened being? Well, that doesn't really matter. What does it mean to find a little slice of peace? Well, that's what matters. And maybe that's even just one single breath.
Do you think it's achievable to live in that space 24/7, 7 days a week?
I think about this constantly, and I talk to people about it constantly. And I think it depends on the type of person you are. There's something that I've run into the last few years, and I like to call it fast food spirituality. And it's somebody that maybe takes a yoga class or reads a book and says publicly and announces publicly, well, I have killed my ego. I am an enlightened being. But then the next day they do something that is 100% against it. The way I am, I've spent years trying to cultivate my spiritual practice, but I still have days where I reach for the bottle. I still have days where I make bad decisions. I still have days where I don't meditate or do yoga when I know I should, because we're human. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And in that human experience, we fall sometimes. So like staying in it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, dude. My favorite guru is Ram Dass. And he was a Jewish guy from New York that died just recently. And Ram Dass, as enlightened as he was, as much as I learned from the old podcasts or their speeches, they turned into podcasts that I listen to now. As much as I listened to those, he still struggled. He still tripped and fell. And that's a dude that I look at as like, this guy's made it. This guy's figuring it out. He's healing the world. He's healing the sick. He's helping them find comfort of people that never thought they'd find comfort. But he still fell because we're human. I think to be in a place where you are 7 days a week, in enlightenment, maybe if you put yourself in a physical location that allows you to have that, where you can block out the rest and you don't have a family or a wife or a girlfriend or a husband or a boyfriend waiting for you at home, maybe. But I think that what I have discovered over the years, that it's not about eliminating it. What it's about for me is cutting down the flash to bang. So the time between feeling that emotion or feeling that negative thought and then recovering from that negative thought. And the more that I dig into it, the more that I try with all my heart to try to cut that, the better. And I would say there's one thing that I think about all the time, that of all the things that I've been working on in my life, it's the one thing I have zero problem. I know I've healed. It's the one thing in my life, in my spiritual practice, that I know that I found the solution to. And I wouldn't say a solution, it's more just practice over time, and that thing is, let's say somebody wrongs me. Let's say somebody upsets me, or they do something or say something that really bothers the hell out of me. I now have the ability to just let it go. And what that came for me was realizing that I don't have the space in my heart to feel negativity, to feel hate, to feel, bad towards someone else. So when I made that decision, and this is the only decision that I've been able to make that I haven't bent since the time that this has actually, clicked in my soul, that I can let go. I can let go like a mother. When it comes to somebody treats me terribly or somebody does something that upsets me, I can let it go. I'll forgive him. Do I hang out with him? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't matter. But do I carry that hate in me? Do I carry that distrust in me? No, because I got enough going on.
Yeah.
The rest is just a process.
Yeah. I want to talk on one thing that you mentioned there, and that was, you said it was I don't know the exact word you used, but the flashbang, like, so that the trigger and then the flashbang, and that time in between those two. And that was a big thing for me, where if you had asked me when I became a man, that was a line of demarcation for me, where I was able to say, when I learned to respond to life rather than react to life. And in that moment of trigger, and I really am not a big fan of that word, but in that moment, time stands still. Like, when you can stand in that space between, something and then how you're going to interface with that, when you can create that time, it stands still. It's like the Matrix. So you're able to manipulate your brain and your body and everything, and it slows things down. And it gives you permission to step into that space, whatever it is, right? In a more mindful approach. And that also comes into tie with what you're saying in regards to, not holding a grudge, or not holding on to things. Really boils down to not taking things personally, right? Same thing as the person who wrote derogatory things about your yoga class, right?
Because it's not about me, it's about them. And that was the game changer for me. It's not about that he thinks that I'm gay. It's about that dude struggles with, connecting with potentially the feminine sides of himself, which we all have. We just need to accept.
Right. And then you could step into that and reverse engineer him and where he came from and his trauma and his upbringing, what his experiences were. And that all leads him to who he is now, right? And when you could see someone in a moment and go, okay, this is not you speaking, this is a hurt version of you. And I may not have that experience per se, but I have those feelings that I've experienced with. And this is my version of your story. And again, I don't need to roll with you, but it's same thing as, Jesus, right? You talk about Ram Dass and his humanistic experiences and saying, like, he's still fucked up. Jesus, at his last moments is like, really, this is what I have to do to prove, Buddha, same thing under the Bodhi tree, like the temptations of the humanistic experiences to my experience, they don't go away. So unless you do live in a vacuum of existence somewhere in a cave where you're not interfacing with this reality, I don't know if that's achievable.
No, I think what it comes down to really is having self-compassion, which is the hardest fucking thing to do, at least for me. I had a realization in therapy about, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago that I hated myself. And that's not something I've admitted to a lot of people, but I think a lot of us probably deal with this. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like the way that my thought patterns had become. But just that one moment of realizing that changed my entire life, because it allowed me to address the parts of myself that I didn't like, and allowed me to try to, I don't want to use the word fix, but address those parts of myself that I felt that way about. But once you find that self-compassion for yourself, you realize that, well, first of all, you know a little more about who you are. And then you realize that every argument that you have in this world is not about you. You're never arguing with someone else. You're arguing against yourself. And once you realize that, you realize that the arguments that you have, they aren't about you, and they're not things that you should carry.
Owning other people's shit. I made that a very stamp in my life where I don't own people's shit. No matter who it is, no matter what it is, I don't own your shit. You own your shit. And if you're projecting that, it's the 4 agreements, right? Don't take anything personal. He goes as far as to say, as if someone shoots you in the head and kills you, you should not take that personal. And that's that's a real tough one. But, when you could apply that to different aspects of your life, my daughter just, she was going through whatever, she had something happen at school. And I said, you know what, Emma, you should forgive that person. And I said, and because she went through, she'd go into like religious class, and she was like, oh, they hung Jesus. And I said, you know what? I said, that's really hard to learn about. I understand that. I said, but you know what he did in his last moments? He forgave. I said, he forgave the people. He said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And I'm not like I was raised Catholic. I'm not super religious in that regard. I would say, I'm more agnostic these days. But I said, the lesson is that he forgave. It's a really tough thing to hear and to understand, especially at 6. But in his last moments, he forgave those people. I was like, and what does that say? Like, there's always an opportunity to heal yourself by forgiving others.
Yeah. Something that along those lines that I heard, Shunryu Suzuki and Ram Dass, I'd say, are the 2 guys that set the groundwork for my spiritual journey. And something that I heard Ram Dass say years ago was that, his guru told him 2 things, and it took him a hell of a journey to figure them out. And when he did, everything changed. So I realized that I wanted to start doing these things. So he told him to do 2 things. He said, tell the truth and love everyone. So when I find myself getting in a place where I'm angry at someone, or I don't want to speak my truths because they're stuck in my throat, let that shit go. I try my best to see the person for who they are, for this vulnerable human form, this person trying to survive and understand their feelings and their emotions and their thoughts. And it's not about me. So all I can do is provide them the love that I have to give them, and not to lie to them and not to lie to others. So I'm not lying. So I am being true to myself. And for me, those 2 values have paid dividends in my life.
It's crazy to have a conversation with a fellow man who's a veteran, who's been through crazy stories, tattoos, beard, similar looks, and to be having conversations around emotions and feelings and mindfulness. And I think now we're starting to shift somewhat culturally where this is an acceptable conversation to be having, but we're still, I think, at a stale point when it comes to the aspect of things where it's common for us because we're in the zeitgeist of it. We're in the wheelhouse of it, but it's not everyday conversation. And maybe it's too heavy for it to be. But for example, people at my day job will say, I was like, how are you doing? And they'll say, oh, living the dream. And my response now is always, as long as it's yours. And none of them say it is. They're all like, no, it's not my fucking dream, And then the other thing is people say like, oh, how are you doing? I go, well, do you want like the water cooler answer to that? Or do you want like a real answer? Because we're going to vibe on a different frequency on both those channels.
Here's what I'll say. fuck worrying about vibing on the frequency. All right. So I had a counselor tell me this years ago. So do not lie. Do not try to make someone feel better at the expense of how you feel when you have to lie about how you're feeling. So what I've started doing is telling people, I'm not really in a good place today, but I know it'll get better, or that I hope it'll get better. Or by the end of this yoga class that I'm taking tonight, or I'm taking in an hour or a minute, I hope I'll feel better and I know I'll get through this. So I'm not lying to someone. Some people don't know how to deal with it. That's okay. Because at the end
Right.
of the day, I feel better about myself because I'm not lying. I don't have a mask on. I'm not trying to be someone who I think others, will feel comfortable around, because that's not what matters. What matters is how I feel inside and how I can engage with the world. And if I engage with the world in a positive, authentic way, then other people will engage in the world, hopefully, in an authentic and positive way and affect others. And it just spirals.
Yeah, because most people are like, oh yeah, so how are you doing? And then it's again, it's either the water cooler, I'm good, or it is more than that. And again, it's just a matter of how we're going to move forward with our dynamic. It's kind of like, all right, let's see what's going on over here. But I like that. That, you just give it doesn't have to be a full in-depth analysis of your emotional level and where you are that day.
Nope.
You don't have to break it
Just
down. You can just say,
nah, I'm a little fucked today. It's okay. Because maybe you are too, and you don't want to talk about it, or you haven't told a soul about it, but you go home at night and cry, because I go at night and cry.
Yeah.
So let's cry together, or at least talk about it and make you feel less alone.
Yeah. One of my, I mean, you guys at American Yogi have amazing gear, right? I love your gear. It's just my style of things. One of my favorite things, and I want to know the origin of it, was manifest your Stoke.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
So something that we talk about a lot of times in yoga and my yoga teacher training was manifesting things for yourself. So to manifest something for yourself, it is not a matter of just waiting for something to happen. It's taking the steps to make those things happen, whether it's in positive thought or action that leads toward the things you want, or putting yourself physically in places that get you to the place you want to be. So that's the manifestation. So what I wanted to do, and what we try to do in American Yogi, is find duality. We want to find things that are from the spiritual world, the yoga world, and then we want to bring them towards things that are either familiar or military, or things that more people can relate to that aren't in that world. And manifesting your Stoke came about where I went through a event with Warrior Surf Foundation down in South Carolina, and getting on the board for the first time was a religious experience for me. It felt incredible. I smiled, and I can't wait smiled.
Yeah.
And dude, it was amazing. So I got off the board, and I was taught by this old seventh group, just huge beard, rough and tough, but the most patient, amazing surf instructor. I gave him the shirt off my back, gave him everything that I had. I said, dude, you changed my life. Thank you for this. So I got back to North Carolina, and I said, I want to make a shirt that commemorates, this experience, but also reaches out to a community that maybe isn't into yoga, or maybe hasn't found it yet, or maybe kind of does but doesn't feel like it's for them. So I said, I'm going to make a shirt that speaks to that community. And I remembered in my head that there's a picture of a dude in uniform overseas in the 70s in Vietnam, holding a surfboard on a beach with his M14 and his kit. And I thought, man, that would be a cool ass picture. But that's all I had to go on. So I spent about a week or so Googling and cold calling. So I started by Googling pictures: soldier smiling, Vietnam beach, soldier surfboard, Vietnam. Finally, I found a few pictures. I found the one I thought of. And then I started Google searching that picture. I found a documentary that was done. So let me preface this by saying that every shirt that we produce in American Yogi has a serious backstory to it. Nothing is like, awesome. That's a cool picture, I'm going to throw it on a shirt. Everything is very, very personal. Things that people connect with. So I found the picture, and it turned out they did a documentary on the China Beach Surf Club in Da Nang, Vietnam, that this guy had started. And I called up the name of the filmmaker. I opened up the white pages, and I called about 6-7 guys until I finally got to the guy that was the producer of this film. And he put me in touch with a 78-year-old man in Florida who was a very interesting conversation. But it ended with him saying, not me in that picture, I'm sorry. So I was like, well, shit, I got to start over. So I went back to him. He said, all right, you know what? I got an idea. Here's a number for a lady that works in the California Surf Museum. Called up this California Surf Museum. Like, I'm telling you, man, it was a
I
wild
love,
goose
yeah,
chase.
as it
It was
should
so
be.
much fun, though.
Yeah,
It was so
as it
much
should
fun.
be. I love the breadcrumb trail that
Dude,
you
it
have
was
to go
amazing.
down, right? This is great.
And
Continue.
in my job in civil affairs, like nobody knows what we do. So
Right.
I have like 5 or 6 different elevator pitches that I give to every single person. So if somebody's from the State Department, they get one brief. If somebody's from, a special forces, operational attachment, I give them a brief. If somebody's a 2-star general, I give them a brief. And they're all different briefs. So I have all these things. So what I did was I developed subconsciously these briefs that I would give different people, whether it was a surfer in the club, whether it was a wife, whether it was somebody that worked in a museum, the director, and I had all these briefs about who I am, what I do, what's American Yogi, all this stuff, what the shirt's going to mean. Finally, after talking to the California Surf Museum, I had a pitch to the widow of this Navy Seabee. And I explained to her who I was, who we are as American Yogi. I talked to her about what we're looking to do with the shirt, what it means to us to do it. And they had a family meeting and they decided you can print the shirt. And I sent shirts to their entire extended family and they sent me pictures of them all wearing it. And it's amazing. I still talk to the son of the man on that shirt, of Jerry Shine. And it's an amazing story. He saved 2 swimmers in the South China Beach in Vietnam with his surfboard that he wasn't allowed to take on, that he broke to put in his foot locker and had to fix when he got over there. And he was kind of a counterculture guy. Like I relate to him a lot. I don't enjoy rules that don't make sense. So I'll follow the rules, but if something doesn't make sense to me, I'll bend it. And he did the same thing. They weren't allowed to take surfboards. He chopped it in half, threw it in the locker, got over to Vietnam, took on kinds of hell from the captain. He said, screw it. He got on the beach, fixed the board, and that was it. And then he found some peace in a very shitty place, just like we found peace in a shitty place this last deployment. So I felt a lot of connection to this guy. So even cooler was, after they gave me permission, I started doing digging. And I found these articles from La Jolla, California, from his local beach, talking about Jerry Shine, this surfer, and him bringing his board to Vietnam and saving these swimmers. And I thought, holy shit, this is amazing. So now with every shirt we send out, we send the shirt and then we send the story and the article with it. So everyone understands when they put on that shirt, they're not just wearing a cool shirt with a guy with a surfboard and kit from Vietnam on it. They understand the whole story and the importance of what it is that they're wearing. And that to me is everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's you, right? That's you in a different war, and that's you in a different body, and that's you in a previous life, right? You found your counterculture. It wasn't surfing, it was yoga, right? It wasn't Vietnam, it was Afghanistan, it was, but it was the same premise. It's the same story that you're telling.
Exactly.
And that's amazing and so serendipitous. And I love the breadcrumb trail of that all. I have to ask you, did you stand your first surf lesson?
I did. I surfed like crazy. It was awesome. Like, that's how I was so stoked. I was like, holy shit, I'm actually okay at this. And I enjoyed it.
Bitch.
It was amazing. Even so much that we're doing a surf yoga retreat in Guatemala where I'm going to surf again. Hopefully I don't get my ass kicked.
Yeah,
what were you gonna say?
I too am drawn to surfing culture, and I just did a podcast on it, and I've just had these experiences around surf culture that have been just surreal. The first time I went surfing with a buddy of mine, he's an avid surfer, so the board he gave me was not for a beginner. But I remember paddling out, breaking dawn, and watching the sun come over the ocean. And, I'll remember that will be a slide on my deathbed that I will go to.
Yeah.
And it was out of this world. And, the surfing experience I had after, I was doing yoga on the beach and I was watching this surfer, and I took pictures of him, and we were leaving vacation, and I see this dude walking down the beach with this board on his head. I'm like, hey man, I was like, were you on the beach yesterday morning at like 5? He's like, yeah. I was like, I saw you, and I took some pictures. Not sound like a weirdo. And he's like, yeah, I saw you doing yoga. And I show him the picture, and he's like, dude, can you send that to me? So I send him all these pictures. And then I just recently went away and I took a formal surf lesson, which was a calamity of errors. But this woman I met who was going on her journey who we ended up praying together, meditating together, and her telling me that I changed her view on humanity. So there's always been this energetic frequency around surfing that I've been drawn to, that it's always brought this rattling reality to me. And it's like I tap into another, maybe it's the ocean, I don't know what it is, but for me, it's always, there's something around surfing culture that's just been like out of this world.
Oh yeah, I don't know whether it's surfing, whether it's fishing on a kayak or paddleboarding or whatever it is. Like there's something that's just so healing about the ocean that there's truly nothing like it. You know, after being in the military for so long, like literally all I want to do is live near the ocean, which is what we're doing now, and it's. I mean, I couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit earlier, and I want to ask you, what do you think comes first, and where can people apply the first step? Is it in action or is it in thought?
As far as what? As far as meditation or surfing or yoga or what?
Any of it. Even having the mindful cup of coffee. Is it the action or whatever it is? Is it the action or the thought that needs to come first? And I know that's kind of a chicken or the egg.
No. It's I think you have to want it first. I think you have to be in a place where you're ready before you do anything. You know, the example that I give people, you know, I usually talk to yoga teacher training classes to give them a different perspective because, you know, for better or for worse, the majority of yoga teachers out there are, you know, don't look like us. So they, you know, the teacher who I'm very close with brings me into her trainings. And, you know, I got a question where, you know, how do I make my boyfriend do yoga? He really needs it. I really want to bring him in. And I was like, look, you're not going to force him to do it. He needs to want it or else it's not going to work. Just like therapy. You can't force someone to go to therapy. They're not going to commit. They have to truly want it. So I think wanting it, you know, in the head, like wanting to make these changes in your life, not wanting to do yoga or wanting to meditate, but wanting to do something that helps you mentally, not even physically at this point, but just mentally. You know, that's the first step. You know, from there, you have to find out what works for you. So then you have to try a bunch of different modalities, you know, whether it is meditation or yoga. You know, I had a counselor that recommended fly fishing, and fly fishing was amazing for me. It gave me something to focus on in nature. You know, but if it is yoga and meditation, there's a whole line for that. You know, you can still study the limbs of yoga, which applied not just to the movement of yoga, it's a whole lifestyle that you can incorporate into other things. And, you know, like I explained to someone the other day, it's everything, you know. So if the physical part of your life doesn't align with the spiritual part of your life, well, then one's going to fail. Or if the spiritual life aligns, but your physical life doesn't align, well, then you're going to fail. But you have to start with a basis. And, you know, the way a counselor explained it to me was like a three-legged table. Three-legged table doesn't stand, you know, but with the four legs, you know, you're working on your sleep habits, you're working your eating habits, your exercise, and your spirituality. Well, now your table can stand. And it's kind of the same way when it comes to the journey. You need to focus on all of those things. And it's not like you focus on them all at once and radical change your life, because those don't usually last. But little by little by little, and it could be days or weeks or months or years or decades, you're going to get there. But every time you go into the practice, every time you make little changes, you're heading towards a place of healing, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, because to me, it boils down to like an energetic chi, right? Like it's an energetic, one gives fuel to the other, right? And the physical, you know, when you start showing up for yourself physically, well, you want to you want to eat better because you want to perform better, right? You want to be more physically attuned to your capabilities. And then, you know, the mental aspect, and it becomes this inertia and this momentum and this wave that you can ride, to keep with the surfing analogies. But ultimately, the wave crashes for everybody. No matter how you may ride it long, you may ride it hard, you may ride it, you know, for as long, but the wave crashes. How do people rebound from that crash? Because, you know, I think the more you level up the game, right, the harder the crash is, and potentially the harder the rebound is.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. I guess I'm kind of torn on that, because You don't do anything different the first, the second, the third time to kind of get back where you are. At least for me. For me, it's the same steps to get back every time. It doesn't matter if I'm doing it 5 years or 5 days. I mean, that's just me.
Yeah.
That generally the same principles apply no matter where you're at in your journey.
Yeah,
It's just the
you could
it's just the
reverse
time
engineer
it
it to
takes.
works. Yeah, you could reverse engineer it to what works. And I think a big part of that is your egoic attachment to those modalities or those specific, for me, what comes up in my mind is, my ability to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and do yoga. And,
Yeah.
you can go into, all right, well, that's, the creator's hour, and that's where you're attuned with the sun. And, there's all this data behind it and spirituality behind it. But ultimately, this is what I needed to do. But now I'm in a different place, and I still hold on to wanting to wake up at that time, but I just can't do it, right? So my ego's like, I need to be the guy that wakes up at 4:30 in the morning and does yoga, but it's no longer
Yeah.
functional for me, right? So it's
No.
about adaptivity.
Here's what I'd say, and this is something that I've kind of come into the last few years, is that if it doesn't feel right, I don't do it.
Yeah.
If I used to wake up at 6 o'clock to do yoga, well then I guess I'm kind of going against my gut, going against the way my body what my body needs. So if it's get up in the morning and drink coffee for 2 hours and maybe do a little writing and then fit in an hour flow later, or maybe not flow that day, that's okay, because I'm listening to my body, and really, like, I think that's the best thing we can do. Because even I go through sound healing sessions. The things they do one day could be the same thing the next day, and one day has an incredible experience, and the next day I have a piss poor experience, or at least not a piss poor experience, but at least an experience that doesn't really tap in.
Sure.
So you just figure it out based on where your body's at, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the pressure we put on ourselves to get up really early, and there's nothing wrong with that, I'll say. But for me, I don't put pressure on myself to get up early. I don't put pressure on myself I have to do this today. I get up in the morning or the night before and I say, all right, these are the things I'm going to do because these are the things that I know that make me feel better. Like yesterday, I got on the longboard. I dropped my kid off at school. I got on the longboard for an hour or so. I came back. I put some sunscreen on. I went to the beach. I laid in the sun in front of the water and I wrote. I didn't do any yoga. It's what I wanted to do the day before, but the day came and I said, you know what? This doesn't really align with what I want to do today. So I did the things that I know make me feel better. And in the end, usually I'm in a better place than if I did things that I didn't want to do, but somewhat make me feel better.
Yeah.
Because maybe it wasn't going to work that day.
But then there's also the element of people, who go to work a job, who have a life built around it. And the idea of doing anything more than that is exhausting, or the thought of doing more than that.
And it is, especially if you
Exhausting.
have kids.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, and everybody's going to find their ways. And what I also tell people is that you don't have to necessarily say, all right, when I get home, I'm dedicating an hour or an hour and a half or 20 minutes to doing meditation. Okay. If you do it, great. But you know what? When you're washing dishes after dinner, you can meditate. Because if you're doing it with concentration and purpose, you might feel better after you do it. Or maybe go for a walk around the block or write something, or there's all kinds of ways. We just pigeonhole ourselves and we have to do these things because I saw on social media that's what this dude does and I want to be like him,
Yeah. And that's a good rabbit to chase, but that's also, the comparison is the thief of joy, right? And if you get into that
100%.
comparison mindset and you start to compare yourselves, especially social media now and instant gratification that we get through that, if you start to reside in that space and not give yourself the grace, like I've moved past the space of being like, all right, I have to wake up at 4 in the morning or 4:30. I'm like, I guess I need the sleep now. I guess that's what my body's requiring. So I'm just going to do that. And, if I get back on that wave of waking up at 4:30, I know it does work for me, but it's just not working right now. And it's not something I could show up for right now. And hopefully I'll get back to it. I know its benefits. I've had the experience of the feeling of how it can create a different day. But right now I'm not able to show up for myself that way. And that's okay as well.
Yeah. Spot on, dude. Spot on.
It also kind of lends itself into the relationships you have, right? With your children, with your spouse, with your community, with, your students, showing up for yourself and giving yourself that permission to experience, right? The different ebbs and flows of life, right? Where
Yeah.
in your experiences, again, being deployed and identifying as a soldier and coming back home, and we kind of touched upon it a little bit earlier, and how that transition isn't easy by any stretch of imagination. How has that and showing up for yourself kind of bled into the home life with the kids and with your wife? And how's that transition and using these tools to kind of be the bumpers?
Yeah. I would say more than anything else, more than any part of my practice, finding presence has been the most important tool to my healing. And it's not necessarily easy, but there are parts of it that are easy. Being present means I'm not picking up my cell phone for 2 hours if I'm with my kids, maybe even 6 hours from with my kids. It means that I'm not going to sit around and watch TV. I'm going to sit around and sit in front of my 7-year-old daughter, and I want to hear about how her day was. And maybe we'll make some Halloween costumes today because she happened to mention that she has a Halloween party on Friday. Or, maybe we're going to go for a walk, and they're going to be able to choose where they want to go, and I'm going to follow them wherever they want, watch them explore, or we'll go to the beach and be along the vastness of the water. Or maybe we're going to play Candyland together. Any of those things, or even my wife and I sitting down having a cup of coffee together, like those things bring you presence. And presence allow you to feel things, kind of raw in a moment that you wouldn't have felt if you were, still focused on, well, I have to do this, I have to do that. I can't think about this right now, or, I'm stuck where I was. And you're still going to have those feelings, but the biggest thing for me is being present. And that's a huge part of this mindful journey, and probably one of the hardest.
Yeah. Shaking yourself out of it. But I think also setting an intention to be present really is super powerful. I do my best.
Have to.
Yeah, I do my best first hour of the morning. I don't touch my phone. Last hour of the night, do my best not to touch my phone. The morning I'm pretty diligent with, because I'm up with my son. And again, like you said earlier, when they're immersed in their space and they're doing their thing, and you get to experience the world through their eyes, right? Allowing them to go on those walks, and it brings you back to the innocence of life. For me, that was something that my children did. Like, it was like putting on a new lens and putting in new eyes. I was like, oh, I was that. Like, I was like, that was me. And you see it with your kids. Like, I see my daughter do certain things, whether it be like playing with her dolls or whatever, or drawing or coloring, or her expression of her artistic self. She'll come in here and she'll like sit down and do a podcast with me, and I see her, and it's like, oh, like, it brings you back to, I remember when my daughter first like saw ants, and she looked at me and like marveled at these little things, and she was like, what the fuck are these? Her face said it all. And just that rediscovery of life and earth, and
It's amazing.
the humanistic experience
Before they're tainted by life.
Yeah.
And then trying to give them the skills that they need to not be as tainted by life.
Yeah. That's a hard one, right?
Yeah,
especially as a dad.
Oh, being a dad's the toughest and most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. So I get it.
Yeah. It's especially when you start to see them. She's in first grade, so she'll come home and it'll be, this one did that, or this one, like she has a Ninjago shirt that she wanted to wear to school. But she's like, well, the girls won't really know what it is. I'm like, that's okay. You explain it to him.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to wear this shirt, but I'll wear it another day. And I was like, okay, like, if that's your choice, that's cool. Yeah. But you could totally wear the Ninjago shirt.
I let my girls wear whatever they want, like within reason, but generally, like, just go be you. I think there's something to be said for just being able to express yourself and not try to fit in. And I that's what I want from my girls. There was, let's see, before she gets on the bus in the morning, I used to say like, oh, have a good day. And then I realized, well, that's not realistic. You're gonna have a day. There's gonna be ups, there's gonna be downs. So that's kind of like a write-off thing to say.
It's a water cooler. Yeah, dude.
Yeah. So what I started saying to her is, before she gets on the bus, I said, be good to the others around you. Be good to the people around you. Because I want to leave her with something like, yeah, Daddy said I need to be good to people, so I'm going to be good to people. And if it's little things like that can help her get to a place where, she could be a good person and feel good about life, well, maybe I can make a difference.
Yeah, I love that.
because
I'm
that's part of it. What's that?
yeah, I'm taking that.
Yeah, dude, take it. Take all of it, bro. Like I tell people at all, like there's nothing special about what I do. I'm just giving you my experiences, and like you want to take them, like please, if you can get something out of them.
Yeah, because you're right. That is just a write off. Like I'll give her a kiss. I'll say, I love you. Have a great day.
Yeah,
But there is something different. It is kind of a write off sentence that we just like, oh, have a good day. That is a
yeah.
write off sentence. And you're right. Like it's not attainable almost. Like it's like
No,
you're setting her up
but
to
you can be
fail.
good to people. Yeah, but you can be good to people. Love
Right.
that.
She could always choose to be a good person. Right. And if you plant that seed and allow her to, like you said, have that data and be like, oh yeah, daddy said to be a good person today. And
Yeah, that's it.
here's an opportunity for me to do so.
Yeah, 100%, brother.
I love
So
it.
like the part of the journey, and I guess kind of like to bring it all full circle, part of the journey and a big part of the journey is taking care of yourself and getting yourself into a place where you are relatively stable, but doing the work. But then the more important part, and this is kind of the duty of American Yogi and the duty of me and, and us, my business partner, we want to help others. We want to pay it forward. Like I get messages every day from people of like, hey, how do I do yoga? Or like, hey, I was going to put a gun in my mouth last night because I read something you wrote and put a gun in my mouth. Like to me, I almost don't even care about anything else that happens. But if I'm able to affect a life and bring someone back from a place that needed to come back from, then there's an expression that's both in the Quran and the Talmud, and it's save one soul, save the world. And if you can do that every couple days, well, fuck man, you're doing all right.
It's a lot of souls.
That's it, brother.
Phil, this is amazing. I really enjoyed the conversation, brother. I really appreciate the way you show up and what you're doing and the example you're setting for your children, for your community, for other men, for veterans to show up in this way and be vulnerable and be expressive. And, you talk about allowing your children to show up authentically. Well, I think we do that by example, right? And you've done that, and you've done that with the company you've created. You've done that with what you're doing for your community. And I appreciate it, man. Keep on showing up the way you have been. And I'm so glad we're able to connect. I look forward to continue the conversation. Where can people get more of your work? Where can people get more from American Yogi?
Yeah, well, first off, it was an absolute pleasure to talk with you. What I love is that the more podcasts that I've done, I love that each person that leads the podcast has a different I don't want to say agenda, but just like a different perspective of what the conversation may look like. And it was really nice talking to you. Like I haven't had a conversation where I haven't been able to talk about these things before. So I really appreciate and I respect what you're doing, and honestly, it's a privilege to share. So that being said, you can reach me quickest on Live American Yogi, so LIVE American YOGI Yogi at Instagram. It's also American Yogi LLC at Facebook, or you can hit us at liveamericanyogi.com online. And honestly, if you can't remember the live part, just type American Yogi. It'll bring you to the page. So those are the easiest places to get to us. And I also want to reiterate that it's not just for military. Like this is for absolutely everyone that is looking for a little bit of healing, a little bit more peace in their life. And I am available. It might take me some time because I'm taking care of the kids and work, but I will
You're moving.
respond to. Yeah, I'm moving. I'm between houses, but I promise everyone that is listening and everyone that is not listening that I will respond to every single message that is sent my way, even if it's a novel long about what they're going through in their lives and what do they do, because there's nothing more important than that.
I mean, we've been trying to put together this podcast for a while. Like it's been, and it's
been probably a year.
Yeah. It has been.
Yeah.
It has been, but we got it done, and I appreciate it, man. And I'm gonna grab a couple shirts, and definitely grabbing the Manifest Your Stoke shirt for sure. Especially with that story. What amazing, Phil. Thank you so much, man. This was tremendous, and I appreciate it, dude.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. It was great talking to you.
Pleasure.